behind. So I was the one with all the glory, and you were the one with all the praise. Beautiful face without a name, for so long. Beautiful smile behind the pain. Did you ever know that you're my hero? Everything I would like to be. I just fly higher than an eagle. You are the wind beneath my wings. Good evening and welcome to another edition of Coffee with Tea. I'm your host, the amazing T Street. I'm so glad that you chose to join me, whether you're joining on Facebook or on YouTube Live. I'm glad that you're here. Tonight is a different kind of night. I had a guest that was lined up for tonight. She was prepared to come on. She reached out to me literally at the beginning of the series and said, T, I think I'm ready. I'd really like to come on. And ironically, the same thing happened for next week. Both the guests for this week and next week who signed up are both still in the midst of their grieving processes, and both thought that they would be further along and ready to come on the show and talk about their experience. And I'm hoping at some point to get them back on. The person who was supposed to come on tonight was going to come on and talk about the stages of grief, and the other person who was going to come on and talk about raising an African American autistic son. And both of them are still in process. And so I decided that tonight I would take the moment to not stay on long. This won't be long, but I wanted to tonight just kind of tackle the topic, because for me, it's always the elephant in the room. There rarely is a day that goes by when someone doesn't text me or call me, or when they see me, ask the question, how are you? And I don't have an answer most of the time, because how I am is really dependent upon the moment. If you had ever told me that my entire emotional strategy for life would be a roller coaster, that I never knew when it was going to come up and when it was going to come down, I would have called you a liar. But as I'm walking through my own stages of grief, I decided tonight I would just spend a couple of moments talking about the process of grief. It's been said, and a lot of the work was done by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who did a lot of the early work on the 5 stages of grief, and they are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And people say, T, what stage are you at? I have no idea from moment to moment. Some days I'm still in denial. Some days I'm super angry. My anger comes out in crazy ways. I'm irritable. Like today, I probably shouldn't have been in public because today was an irritable day. And generally when I'm in that stage, when I'm angry, I try to stay away from people, because it's really, really hard to process when people are in your space, and it's not their fault. It's what I'm dealing with. And so no one deserves to be on the receiving end of that from me. So I generally stay home when I'm in that space. As I said, I can't really always tell you when that space is coming. The first stage of grief is denial, and it says that grief is the process of healing. Denial really it doesn't mean that you don't think it really exists. It's just still trying to imagine and wrap your head around the fact that the person that you love so much really is gone from the physical space, never to be here again. Nothing that I've ever been through in life ever prepared me for the grief that I feel in having lost my mom. My mom was the most influential person in my life. All of the good parts of who I am came from the parts of me that she shaped. My commitment to loving Jesus came from my mom. My commitment to service came from my mom. My ethics came from my mom. My commitment to whatever you commit to, get it done, do it, and do it to the best of your ability. All that is influenced by my mom. And so the loss of my mom in January has really taken me for a loop. And I'm not going to go through all of my stages tonight because it's just not, you know, it's not appropriate. And I don't really have all the answers, to be really honest, which is also another part for me in dealing with grief is I like to be in control. I'm a control freak. Everybody who knows me knows that. And this is the one thing in my life over which I have no control. From moment to moment, someone will say, how are you? I'm like, 10:01. I'm good for right now. We'll see what 10:02 looks like. So the first step is denial. The second step is anger. And then the third step is bargaining, where you start to wonder, what could I have done differently? Is there anything, if I had done this, if I had just done this, would it have prolonged? If somebody else had just done this, would it have prolonged? And so you just never know. And then there's the stages of depression. And I can be really candid and honest with folks and saying, right now, I'm really battling depression. And in the midst of trying to find a therapist, I'm dealing with depression. And so most of it is happening through my spiritual walk. But I also believe that doctors are important too. And I believe in therapy. So please hear me say that. It's not just, oh, I'm going to pray, I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray. And as soon as I find a good therapist, I'm going to go to see that therapist too. So I'm going to walk through both stages at the same time, both processes at the same time. And finally, acceptance. And acceptance isn't saying, oh, I'm okay with it. I'm never going to be okay with it. But it's at the place where you really just come to figure out what the new norm looks like. And so because both of my guests for this week and next week are both in the midst of battling grief and in the midst of their fight and their struggle to stay on this side of the dirt from grief, I just thought I would just put mine out there tonight and just kind of come on and really encourage people. If you're struggling with grief, last week, what my guest last week, Brashendra, talked about Grief Share. So if you're interested, Grief Share is an option. But whatever you do, just know that whatever you're feeling at the moment, it's okay. And it's okay to not be okay. Now that people say it so much now, it's becoming cliche. But I don't ever want it to be cliche when I say to people, some days I'm okay, and some days I'm not. And when I'm not, I refuse to dance to make other people okay with me not being okay. So when I'm not okay, I just don't talk. I just kind of go inward. I reflect. I spend time with myself. I generally, the person I lean on is my sister because, you know, we kind of are walking this pathway together. And I just really want to encourage you that if you're walking through the stages of grief, get some help. I'm seeking right now. I won't lie. You all know that I'm always transparent. I'm seeking help right now. Just to come on tonight to talk is everything. And it's taking everything that's inside of me because walking this journey of grief after losing my mom is gut-wrenching. It is the most painful feeling I've ever had. And I've walked through pain. I've had lots of pain in my life. But I can honestly say that nothing that I've been through ever prepared me for this moment. But here's what I know. I know for a fact that when I'm grieving, I don't grieve like people who have no hope because my faith is different. My faith teaches me that death on this side of the grave is not the end. And so I don't grieve like people who don't have hope, but I will tell you that I grieve and that the pain is real and that it's deep. And if I haven't had a chance, hopefully everybody who reached out to me, I had an opportunity to say thank you. If you reached out to people early on as they were grieving, just know that after the service is over and the chicken has stopped being delivered and the phone calls cease and the flowers stop, people are still left with their grief. And so one of the things I try really hard to do is to reach back out to people and say, hey, I just want you to know I'm still thinking about you. I'm still praying for you. And I'm still here to be of service to you if I can. And so tonight, I just wanted to come on and share that the reason I don't have a guest tonight, and I won't have one next week, is because both guests reached out and said, T, I feel terrible, but I'm just emotionally not ready. And I told them, you take all the time you need. And if you're never ready, I'm going to love you nonetheless. And so that's why I don't have guests tonight. But I still wanted to come on and do this segment, the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I'm somewhere in between each and every day in each one of those steps. But at the end of the day, I'm really grateful to the people in my life. One of the things I can tell you is that this period of my life has really expanded my circle of love. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to the people who love me enough to stand in the gap for me when I couldn't pray for myself, who prayed for me and who are still praying for me. And on the days when I don't have words, on the days when I can't get out of bed, I'm grateful for the people who are praying, and I can feel and sense the prayers. So tonight, I just wanted to come on and tell you, one, why I didn't have guests tonight, and ask you to pray for those two people who are going to come on this week and next week, but also to ask you to continue to lift everyone who's battling grief. And guess what? Grief isn't just about when someone dies. You could be grieving a relationship that ended. You could be grieving the loss of a job in the midst of COVID. You could be grieving anything. Give people grace and help them to know that it's okay not to be okay. But it's also, on some days, okay to be okay. Don't expect everybody to be walking around in sackcloth with no makeup and just always in the state of depression and walking through the valley. There are days when I walk through the valley, but I refuse to pitch a tent. I will walk to the valley and sometimes through the valley, but I will not pitch a tent because I was not made for valley living. And even when I'm in the valley, I'm abundantly clear that when I look over, there's a lily in the valley, and it's bright as the morning star. And so even when I'm in the valley, I'm not there alone. But visit the valley, but don't pitch a tent because we were not made for valley living. We are exceptional creatures and we were meant for mountaintop living. I'm the Amazing T Street. I thank you for joining me for another edition of Coffee with T. And though I'm the Amazing T Street, I can assure you that there is absolutely positively nothing amazing in me that's not in each and every one of you. I thank you so much for your prayers and keep me lifted as I continue to walk through the 5 stages of grief. I love you and I appreciate you all. Have a great rest of your evening.